wonder if David Oyelowo and anybody else in the film did any gun training for any of the shooting that they did in this movie. What's up, guys? This is Courtney, one half of the brothers Deconstruction here, and I'm bringing you my sort of late review for Don't Let Go. Now, this movie has been out for a couple of weeks, but I only recently got the chance to see it. Spoilers, as usual. So I figured I'd get the review up really quickly before I try and go out and see it Chapter 2. Having car problems, so hopefully I'll get those. I'll get to pick it up tomorrow, and then I'll go see it on $5 Tuesdays. What? I don't know if I'm going to add any music or any funny stuff to that. But anyway, moving on to the film. Don't Let Go stars Storm Reed, David Oyelowo, Michael T. Williamson, Brian Tyree Henry, Alfred Molina. It has a very well-rounded cast for the film. This movie is about David Oyelowo's police officer. I think he's a detective. I can't remember his name. And his niece, Ashley, played by Storm Reed. They have a pretty close relationship. Her and her family are murdered. And it basically becomes like a murder mystery slash a sci-fi film, which also, just like I spoke about back when I was reviewing the Toy Story movies, it becomes a ticking clock film, the plot at least, because once the sci-fi stuff starts happening, David's character has a specific time frame before Ashley and her family are murdered again. So after her family is murdered, he gets a phone call from after the funeral, and he's literally put them in the ground. He's drinking, he's watching, he's basically depressed as hell. He had to bury his niece and his brother and his sister-in-law. He gets a phone call from Ashley's phone. Now he goes to evidence and say, hey, did you pick up my niece's phone? They were supposed to, we don't know what they did. He goes back to the house, sees the phone in the bathroom, gets a call from her again. He didn't answer it the first time. He answers it. She's on the other line. Basically what we find out is that he's 2 weeks in the future. Because I think it was after the funeral is about like 2 weeks after the murder. Generally, people tend to get buried relatively quickly after they die. So I think it's about 2 weeks. He says when he actually tells her at some point in the film that they're 2 weeks in the future and she's 2 weeks behind. So he tells her that they've been murdered later on in the film. But he basically has to figure out who killed her parents and her and why. So he starts combing over the case. There's this weird like flashing red light thing, and he has like some transitions into different consciousness in the timeline. So overall, I really enjoyed the movie. My friend that I went with didn't like it as much, and I think that's because how it ended. This is a slow burn movie. It starts off, the pacing is kind of fast, but it starts off slow because there's not a lot of stuff happening in the film. It's doing a lot of building, it's kind of staying in one place. We're kind of figuring out information and picking up on stuff. But the reason why I say the pacing is kind of quick to at least start out with is because the plot starts really quickly. Like the movie starts out with, I think, Ashley coming out of the library or the movie theater or something like that, and then calling her uncle to come pick her up because her mom dropped her off. Her dad was supposed to pick her up, but didn't. And she didn't have her bus pass, so she can't take the bus. And they go to a diner that they always go to, and they just hang out and talk or whatever like that. We get that small little relationship building, and we can kind of tell that it's a close relationship. They have this cute little moment where she draws a heart on a piece of paper with a crayon, and they pass it back and forth, adding different features and everything like that. And that after that, it shows him at work doing a bunch of paperwork. She calls him, tells him about like how her dad made it up to her because he got her a new bike for her birthday that she's been wanting, by her words, for 15 years, even though she's only like 15. maybe just a little bit younger. I'm not entirely sure how old Storm Reed is. He painted her room, but the window got stuck because of the paint, and they took her out to dinner, all this other stuff. And then he says, "Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm buried in paperwork right now. Can I call you? Can we talk later?" She says, "Yeah, sure." Later on in the day, she calls. There's a whole bunch of static on the phone. She's kind of like crying out for help. He doesn't know really what's going on. He stops by the house, finds them all dead, right? That happens within like the first 10 minutes of the film. Now, this movie is only an hour, 45 minutes, I think, maybe just under that. So that's a relatively, really quick inciting incident. Generally, you have build up, and more or less, it's like 15, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how long the film is. But there's a lot more build up, especially if you're trying to sell the relationship between David's character and Ashley. So this came as a shock to me in the theater because I was like, oh, okay, we're getting started really, really quickly. I would have expected there to be a little bit more relationship building and showing that close relationship that they have together. Maybe a little bit of insight on how her dad is or whatever like that. But we get all of that kind of later after the fact. But after the funeral, you know, the story or the plot really kind of starts, because then David's at home drinking. He's looking at videos that Ashley has posted, and you know, he's just overall depressed. His partner, who was played by Mike Kelty Williamson, again, sorry for the mispronouncing of the name, he comes by and they say, hey, we have like some information on their murders. It's this Georgie, it's this, you know, maybe your brother got back into dealing drugs, and there's this Georgie person that we've heard about, but the only thing that we have is like a sketch that a witness who's now dead kind of provided. You know, he starts going, after he starts getting the phone calls and starts looking back into the case, he goes down a rabbit hole. Now, there's a couple of times, even at the beginning of the movie, and there's a couple of transitions. There's a blinking red light and like some weird camera shaking and him kind of dropping into, I guess, another consciousness. This happens once in the movie, they're actually dropping into the consciousness, but the red light kind of happens 3 or 4 times in the film. But overall, as far as performances go, I really, really enjoyed the film. I like the performances. Ashley was really, really sassy and kind of bossy, but I guess when you're spoiled by your uncle and you have a dad that's like bipolar, is on medication, used to deal drugs and everything, you kind of have that kind of attitude where you don't really take a whole lot of shit, even as a kid. So she was really sassy, which was funny, and I liked David Oyelowo's performance of, you could tell how heartbroken he was to actually have to bury his niece and bury his brother and his sister-in-law. And even later parts in the film, when he's slowly discovering who's behind this, the confusion and everything. However, my one big problem is with parts in the story. I was able to telegraph relatively early on that it was some type of setup. When he went back to the crime scene and started going through his brother's things, he came across this little post-it note, because of his brother's mental illness. He used to leave post-it notes everywhere. And then there's one book about bettering your life. He left a post-it note that said, speak with Georgie. And when he posted that in his office, his captain said, Georgie, where did you get that name from? And then he was like, does that mean something to you? And then he told him, then that's where he finds out, hey, this is some, drug dealer that's kind of a ghost that we don't have any leads on except for the sketch. I was able to telegraph it right then and there that somebody was in on this because of the way that Alfred Molina looked. Alfred Molina plays the captain. And then toward the end of the film, when you know, because he gets shot once in the film and then bleeds out. And while he's bleeding out, I don't know if he dies or not, but while he's bleeding out, he kind of has a moment. He forwards some information to Ashley and then has a moment where he kind of zips back into himself. He's in the car with, I forget Michael T. Williamson's character's name, but he's in the car with him, supposed to be dropping off at like Little League practice so he can give his son his glove. But he kind of wakes up with new information because they've been killed again, but it's on a different day, and they've been killed differently. Before, he found his brother in his room, in his bedroom. He found Ashley in a bathroom. This time he finds Ashley in her bedroom and his brother and his sister-in-law in the living room, dead. And the day that they died changed. Before it was a Wednesday, this time it's a Tuesday. So I don't know if he died at the police station because he had gone back looking for evidence after he had gotten shot and came up on the lead, and then he just kind of bled out in the parking lot while on the phone with Ashley, telling her, hey, call your uncle so-and-so, his partner. You know, we have this thing of if you have a really, really close friend, any relative that's, oh, this is your uncle, this is your aunt, whatever like that, even though they might not be related. Bobby, I think, his name is Bobby. So he says, call Bobby if you have any problems, blah, blah, blah. Even then, at the police station, when he zips back into his head, he goes back to the police station. He gets shot again, I believe, goes back to the police station, and then he's kind of, the captain and Bobby kind of, hey, IA is investigating Georgie. We have somebody in IA who's investigating Georgie. Georgie isn't a person. The sketch that we came up with was fake. Georgie is really a collective of dirty cops on the force that are being investigated. So we're going to take you to meet Eves, who is our connect in IA. So at that point, I called it that somebody is in on this. They're going to kill him. I thought it would have been both Alfred Molina and Michael T. Williamson, but it was just Michael T. Williamson. It was just Bobby, because Alfred Molina is killed immediately, and then Bobby says, "I told your brother to leave, to get out, to leave this alone, because there was nothing but trouble coming for him. Why didn't he go?" And so Bobby was the one that killed them because his brother had gotten involved with the dirty cops or whatever. And they told him, hey, if you're in on this, go show us what you're made of. You need to go kill these people. So I kind of telegraphed that early on. And it ended with Ashley in the previous timeline going back and escaping because, again, David's character tells her, your window is going to be sealed because of the paint. Remember that, okay? If I can save you, you can save me. So she breaks out the window. She runs around. There's this like kind of hide and seek game. She escapes Bobby and then goes over to her uncle's house with Bobby on her tail. Now, he comes out the house and he's like, what's going on? So he ends up killing Bobby before Bobby can kill him in the current timeline that we're in. And so he kills Bobby. Everything is okay. I mean, his brother and his sister-in-law are still dead, but Ashley is alive. So my only problems with the story are, one, I was able to kind of telegraph what was going to go on, and two, you would have thought that ideally you would have saved your brother and your sister-in-law too instead of letting them die. Yeah, saving Ashley is important as well, but because that's kind of his daughter anyway, because they're so close. but ideally you want to save everybody in the family instead of just one person. But I guess that's some type of consolation prize. Other than that, the film is, I liked it. Again, I liked it. I wasn't expecting it to end on a sour note, and I hoping that it wouldn't, especially with the way that Bobby was just going crazy. Bobby was a little unhinged. He shot Brian Tyree in the fucking face after, and it was, and I will admit that this movie is very, very tense when it needs to be. When Bobby says, hey, get y'all asses in the house, I need to find out how your daughter followed you to this place and found out all this stuff. Like, who's fucking talking? And there's a moment he has a shotgun on him, and then, well, one, he shoots the dog, and then he said he has a shotgun on Brian Tyree Henry, and there's a moment where he brings it down, and you think, hey, maybe they're going to be able to talk about this or what, and he's just shoots his face clean off. Now, they don't show it because they cut from it, but shoots his face off. Ashley runs upstairs, and then while he's like trying to take aim, the wife moves the gun out the way. He like knocks her down, shoots her, chases after Ashley. So it was really, really tense. And you know, even when David's character was on the phone with Ashley, he shot him in the fucking hand, and it was like sudden. It was like, holy shit, he's just trigger happy as hell. But overall, I liked the performances. It was just kind of easy to telegraph that something fishy was going on, because I just thought there was going to be a straight up murder mystery, especially learning that her dad used to deal drugs, and you know, he's bipolar, he has a mental illness that he's taking medication for. Maybe he's starting to better his life, but maybe his past is coming up to catch him. And then it's like, okay, this is clearly a setup. Like, something's going on here. And then even there's a couple of times where David is going over, where his character is going over the evidence, like the photos. And he's like, my brother liked this alcohol, like mixed drinks and like sweet mixed drinks. Why is there bourbon on the bed? Maybe you're thinking, oh, that's the only thing in the house. No. Another picture, the kitchen. There's a bottle of vodka on the table. This is staged. Something's wrong here. Even then, there's a couple of those moments where something seemed off. So I was like, oh, this is a setup plot. Okay. But the ticking clock plot, it was stopped. He rescues Ashley. And, you know, we can only presume that they have a good relationship. And I'm guessing that there's no post-credit scene or after-credit scene or nothing like that. And we can only guess that he goes with this information to the captain, and then they start trying to figure out what the fuck going on. So yeah, that's my review for Don't Let Go. It's probably way longer than I expected it to be, but again, it's a fine film. There are little contrivances with the plot that are kind of okay, I saw that coming, or and maybe this could have been changed here and there. But overall, I liked the film, especially because it was something different. And when I saw the trailer, I instantly knew that I wanted to go see it, because it's something that you haven't really seen. It's a murder mystery with some type of time travel, parallel timeline that you can change and affect while you're in the future, with a cop procedural murder mystery. I haven't seen any movie like that. And plus it's starring, you know, David Oyelowo, Storm Reed, all these well-known actors. I was like, I'm a sucker for the family films where it's somebody trying to figure out what happened to their family because they had such a close-knit relationship to, you know, one particular family member. So that's my review. I'm going to be getting up my review for the first Spider-Man film. I recorded it like last week, but I just never got around to editing it. I ordered in that video I talk about ordering the Blu-ray trilogy for the Spider-Man films. I just recently ordered that, so that should be here soon. So I'll be able to watch Spider-Man 2 and 3 and do those super late reviews. And then Bruce and I are going to come together, like I said, and review of a movie that I don't even want to do. So, thanks so much for all the support, whether it's 1, 5, 10, or 100 views. Check out the other videos on the channel, guys. I'll talk to you later.